Let's talk about what to expect tomorrow night with the results, specifically about the House. Joining us now, House Speaker Paul Ryan. He's in Janesville, Wisconsin. Mr. Speaker, thanks for being here. This is the first time you are not on the ballot since 1998. You are finishing this campaign where you started it, in southern Wisconsin, in that district you've represented since then. So your sense of tonight and where it's heading tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually feel good. I've been crisscrossing not just Wisconsin, but America. I've spent the last 3 weeks in 12 states and 50 cities campaigning with our members in the toughest races. Frankly, our members feel pretty good because they have a really good message, Brett. I mean, look at what we have just been able to achieve in Congress with the president in the last 2 years. A record economy, the military being rebuilt, people feeling better about things, more jobs being offered in America today than people looking for jobs, wages growing faster than they have since before the recession. And because of all of this, our candidates feel like they have a great message. And the alternative is the chaos and the dysfunction in Washington that the Democrats are basically promising if they get control of Congress. So we really feel like we got a good shot at keeping our majority because our record is so good and the contrast is so strong.
Mr. Speaker, Politico reported that you called President Trump Sunday to plead with him to focus on the economy in the closing argument. Is that true?
It wouldn't surprise you that they don't get these things exactly right, and this is no exception. Look, he and I talk all the time. We compare notes on the campaign trail. We've been speaking repeatedly throughout this campaign cycle in just the last few weeks. So we're always comparing notes about the campaign, about messaging. He frankly called me to see how certain members were doing because he cares about a lot of our members. We can do both. Look, people do care about national security. We want a secure border. That's really clear. The Democrats want to abolish ICE. It's ridiculous. And we do think we should be talking about our strong economy because it's been spectacular. And the Democrats are talking about rolling back and raising taxes, more spending. They're proposing to basically undo all the good progress that we've been having. I would simply ask people, do you feel better today than you did 2 years ago? If so, get out and vote tomorrow. That is what the president and I have been talking about. And we can talk about more than one issue, but we really do have a very good story to tell on the economy, about wages, about jobs, about opportunities, and how people feel about them. And we think it's a really good story to tell.
About taxes, you obviously passed a major tax reform bill and passed the House, passed the Senate, made it to the president's desk. Here's the president on tax cuts on the campaign trail. Take a listen.
We're going to be putting in a 10% tax cut for middle-income families. It's going to be put in next year.
We passed a massive tax cut, massive, for Ohio workers, and we will soon follow it up with another 10% tax cut for the middle class. We got to win the House to do that, by the way.
So he's saying in addition to the first round, to do a second round 10% tax cut for the middle class. The specifics of that never came out before tomorrow. Was there a specific plan? Is there a specific plan?
Yeah, I've spoken with the president a number of times about this, as has Kevin Brady, our chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, my old job. And so we talked about this, and we passed in the House already a bill making the family tax relief provisions, the small business tax relief provisions permanent. And what the president wants to do is on tax reform 2.0 in the next session of Congress is to go at it again and give middle class tax relief. So that's what he's been talking about. We agree. We think that's something that Congress in the next session should work on. So we think we've made great progress. The economy is growing extremely well, largely because of tax cuts and tax reform. And so the president wants to have another kick at it to keep this economy growing. I think that's a good idea.
But so far, it's not a specific plan that's going to be rolled out or something.
No, I mean, that's the way tax laws work. The Ways and Means Committee can come up with many different ways of getting a 10% tax cut on income taxes for middle-income taxpayers. And by the way, there are ways of doing it on a revenue-neutral basis. That's something that they're going to work through the process at the beginning of the next session of Congress.
All right. The other thing that obviously you were in the news recently is this back and forth on birthright citizenship. The president saying he could do it possibly with an executive order. You said that that was not the case. You were asked about that on the trail. The president then tweeted out after seeing that Paul Ryan should be focusing on holding the majority rather than giving his opinions on birthright citizenship, something he knows nothing about. Our new Republican majority will work on this, closing the immigration loopholes and securing our border. What about that, Mr. Speaker?
It's all good. Like I said, he and I have a very long, very, very good relationship. We talked that day later on. Look, I was commenting on the means, not the merits. I think we should review this, especially for illegals and people getting a tourist visa coming over just to have a kid. That's something we should look at because this is the 21st century. It's not the 18th century when that was written. But what I was commenting on are the constitutional means of achieving something like that. I think it's either a constitutional amendment or a statutory change that would be required, not an executive order. An executive order could force a court challenge, but I don't think an executive order could actually make the change. That has to be either constitutional or at very least statutory. So I was basically talking about a constitutional process, the legal process on achieving something. But should we look at whether or not in the 21st century, someone coming over with a tourist visa just for the sake of having a baby here to then get citizenship? Yeah, I think that's something that should be reviewed.
Mr. Speaker, you've spent the last 3 weeks in 50 cities, 12 states, campaigning with 25 different House members. You raised $200 million plus hard dollars over the past 3 years for this effort. If the House flips tomorrow, why will that have happened?
History is not our friend. And what I mean when I say that, Brett, is the historic average for a midterm election for a president's party in the president's first midterm is 32 seats. We have a 23-seat majority. A couple of our seats are already gone because of recent redistricting that was done in, say, Pennsylvania. So we already are standing against a historical trend that cuts against us. But the reason I feel like this is going to be really, really close, and I feel cautiously optimistic, is because of our record. We have done so much. We passed over 1,000 bills in the House in just the last 2 years, making a huge difference, tackling opioids, human trafficking, rebuilding the military, overhauling the VA, deregulating the economy, creating jobs and wages, and overhauling the tax system, among many other things. So it's been an enormous record of accomplishment. Most objective Americans would see that the country is so much better off than it was just 2 years ago. And they don't want to see the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, take power to bring chaos and gridlock to Washington. They'll try to impeach the president. They want to abolish ICE. And that's the agency that guards our border, that stops drugs from coming into our country. And they want socialized medicine, which would be a disaster for our country, plus a $32 trillion tax increase to pay for it. So I think the contrast is clear. That's why I think we got a really good chance, because history, although it's not our friend, we have a good record that can help combat that.
Last thing quickly, Mr. Speaker, I've covered you for a long time. I covered you as vice presidential nominee, in which you made the case numerous times on the trail and in your acceptance speech that we can't spend money that we don't have, that the debt crisis is going to hit us eventually. This year, the federal deficits are $779 billion. CBO is projecting $973 billion for 2019, $1 trillion for 2020. Is that going to be addressed?
It has to be addressed. And, Brett, none of those numbers are a surprise to anybody. The CBO has been telling this for years, and it's because of demographics. The baby boomers are retiring, and we're not ready for them. I would note that the House did pass health care reform legislation, which, in addition to guaranteeing protection for people with pre-existing conditions, would have given people more choices, lowered premiums, but it also would have been a great effort at debt reduction. The House passed that bill. It was the biggest debt reduction bill we've considered in a generation, the biggest entitlement reform bill we considered in a generation. Unfortunately, it failed to pass the Senate by 1 vote. So I think Congress needs to get back at that, because we do need health care reform. We need to lower premiums. We need to maintain those protections for pre-existing conditions, as our bill did do. But you also have to deal with these issues. You also, on the flip side, Brett, you got to have a growing economy. More people working, paying taxes, keeping revenues up. That's happening because we've done what we need to do to get this economy growing. There's more to do, but we've done a great job on that. So on the entitlement side, yes, that's something that's got to get done.
Are you sad you're not on the ballot?
You know, it's bittersweet. I'm excited about the guy who's running, Brian Stile, running for my seat. I think he's going to do a spectacular job. I think he's going to win. I've been on a bus the last couple of days with my governor, Scott Walker. He's got a really tough race here. So right now I'm just sort of thinking about the people I care about, I want to see win. There are a lot of my colleagues in Congress who are really tough races that deserved and earned re-election, and I want to make sure that those guys get elected. That's pretty much my focus. But yeah, it's a little bittersweet. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is the 10th election cycle. So the first time since 1998, I've never been on a ballot. So yeah, it's a little bittersweet.
Mr. Speaker, we appreciate your time tonight.
You bet. Take care, Brett.